Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we cut through the noise to get you those essential, fascinating insights. Today, we're really plunging into the conflict between Ukraine and Russia. It's constantly evolving, always reshaping modern warfare in, well, surprising ways. So, our mission today, we're going to unpack the latest on Ukraine's military innovations. Specifically, their, let's say, audacious use of advanced drones and these long-range precision strikes. And crucially, how these are hitting Russian capabilities, their leadership, the whole trajectory of the war, really.
Perfect.
We've dug through a lot of recent reports to pull out the key facts for you.
Right, and understanding these shifts, it's really more than just tactics. It tells you something deeper about modern warfare, about, the resilience of a nation defending itself. We'll look at the successes, definitely, but also the challenges, the complexities involved. It's incredibly dynamic. Let's lay out what the sources are telling us.
Okay, let's get into it. The sources highlight this unmanned revolution, focusing first on these naval drones. And we absolutely have to start with the impact of Ukraine's Unmanned Surface Vessels, USVs. They're proving to be, well, real game changers. The attack on the Kerch Strait Bridge, July 16th, 2023, that's a prime example. Picture this. 2 naval drones hit the bridge. Explosions just 20 minutes apart. And reports say these weren't simple devices. No, they were sophisticated second-generation USVs, built for stealth, apparently using radar-absorbent carbon fiberglass. Really hard to spot.
So low observability was key.
Exactly. And they had advanced comms, targeting systems, precision cameras, thermal and video. This is advanced stuff, asymmetric warfare, really.
Right.
And the destructive power. Pretty significant. Each one packed about 1,000 pounds. That's, 453 kilos of explosives. But here's the interesting bit. It wasn't just a big bang.
The shape charge.
You got it.
Yeah.
Arranged in a linear-shaped charge, designed specifically to focus the blast upwards, and it worked. Caused substantial damage, buckled the road deck, righted an expansion joint. It was clearly an engineered attack. Very specific goal.
And what's fascinating is how this fits into the bigger picture, the strategic evolution. Ukraine really started ramping up USV use in late 2022.
Right.
And that led pretty quickly to that big attack on the Sevastopol naval base. Russia itself reported losing, I think, 7 USVs and 9 UAVs, the aerial drones. So it wasn't just a one-off hit. It marked a real shift.
A new front opened up, essentially.
Pretty much. Then fast forward to February 2024, you get the sinking of the Caesar Kunikov, that landing ship, hit by Ukrainian naval drones off Crimea. Now that, according to reports, was kind of the last straw for a lot of the Russian pro-war bloggers and commentators.
Leading to heads rolling.
Exactly. Black Sea Fleet Commander Viktor Sokolov got sacked right after. And interestingly, he'd only replaced his predecessor, Osipov, back in mid-2022, also after Ukrainian attacks. So you see this pattern emerging. Direct consequences for Russian command from these drone successes.
Wow.
And the cumulative effect, it's huge. Ukraine is claiming they've put 1/3 of Russia's Black Sea warships out of action since the invasion started. That's massive. It's not just about sinking ships anymore.
No, it sounds like it changes the whole naval balance.
It absolutely does. It's sea denial, basically. Ukraine's shown how a smaller, tech-savvy force can really challenge a big, traditional navy. They're protecting shipping lanes, reshaping the whole Black Sea situation with, relatively low-cost assets.
That's a really powerful picture on the naval side. But does this kind of innovation, this boldness, carry over to the land war? We're hearing about new permissions for long-range strikes. How much does that change things, hitting targets deep inside Russia?
Yeah, critical question. And yes, it definitely extends to the ground strategy. That recent shift in Western support, it's significant. For, over a year, the Biden administration held back on letting Ukraine use long-range U.S. missiles on Russian soil.
Right. That was a big point of contention.
It was. But now they've reportedly given the green light for things like ATET-CMS, that's the Army Tactical Missile System, powerful, long-range stuff. That's a major policy shift. It changes the calculus.
Okay, so on paper, that sounds like a massive boost. But practically speaking, are there limits? Can Ukraine now just hammer Russian supply lines and command posts whenever they want?
Well, that's where you get into the nuance. Analysts are quick to point out the U.S. doesn't have unlimited ATET-CMS, and Western production just can't keep up with the kind of demand you'd need for really significant battlefield effects across the board.
A resource constraint.
Exactly. We saw something similar before, right? Ukraine used up most of the UK's Storm Shadow missiles back in 2023. Good missiles, but it wasn't quite enough to really degrade Russian command and control systemically. So permission is one thing, but the actual quantity and sustained supply, that's still a challenge. It means every shot really has to count.
Precision and strategic choice become paramount then.
Absolutely.
And speaking of precision, our sources detail this, frankly, chilling aspect of the strategy, going after high-ranking Russian commanders directly. What's the thinking there?
Yeah, this really touches on some serious questions about modern conflict accountability. We've seen some incredibly precise strikes. Take the one on July 3rd, 2025. Killed Major General Mikhail Gudkov. He was the deputy commander-in-chief of the Russian Navy. Hit in Kursk Oblast.
Oh, yeah. HIMARS?
Yeah, HIMARS rocket attack, known for its precision. And reports say it also killed at least 20 other officers, including his deputy. It was a significant decapitation strike.
And Gudkov himself. There's context there, isn't there?
There is, and it's grim, but important context. He used to command the 155th Guards Naval Infantry Brigade, that unit. It's notorious for alleged war crimes. Really horrific stuff. Executions of POWs, displaying severed heads in Belgorod Oblast back in August 2024. They were also implicated in atrocities in Bucha, Irpin, Hostomel.
So targeting him wasn't just about his rank.
It seems not. It points towards targeting individuals linked to extreme brutality. Military analysts are actually calling this sort of thing Israeli-style tactics on Ukraine's part, actively hunting down individuals allegedly responsible for war crimes.
Wow.
The idea, according to the analysis, is that it acts as a powerful morale corroder for the Russians. Sends a message. Commit these acts and you won't live that long. It's a kind of kinetic accountability happening outside formal legal channels meant to deter and demoralize.
That is a stark message indeed. But why are these senior Russian officers proving so vulnerable? You'd think they'd be better protected.
Well, sources point to a couple of things. One is a reported weakness in Russia's NCO Corps, the non-commissioned officers, and even junior officers. This apparently forces senior commanders much closer to the front lines than you might expect, just to keep operations running.
Or expose them.
Exactly. And then there's the factor that some are described as being, let's say, sloppy about posting on troop and staff movements on social media, basically giving away their locations sometimes. When you combine those factors, losing senior leaders becomes, as one source put it, quite painful for Russia. Hard to replace that experience quickly. And we've seen others confirmed killed too. Lieutenant General Oleg Solkov in July 23, Major General Vladimir Zavatsky in November 23. It looks like a consistent strategy.
Okay, so we're seeing impacts on command, on morale, specific leaders being targeted. Let's zoom out again to the broader toll. The sheer human and material cost for Russia. The numbers, they're just staggering. Kyiv claims over 1 million Russian casualties killed and injured by mid-June 2025.
1 million?
Yeah. Now, the British government estimated around 920,000 back in April 2025. Of course, you always have to take numbers from warring sides with, grain of salt. Experts always caution about inflation.
Yeah, sure. Verification is incredibly hard.
Right. But independent Russian outlets like Mediazona working with BBC Russian, they've confirmed over 111,000 specific Russian military deaths by early June 2025. And even they say the real number's far higher, unpublished deaths, bodies not recovered. The scale is just immense, whichever figure you look at.
He points to a huge vulnerability.
And look at this detail. The daily casualty rate. It's accelerated dramatically. Started around 340 a day in 2022, jumped to nearly 700 in 2023, then over 1,100 in 2024, and the first half of 2025 averaging almost 1,300 per day.
1,300 a day? That's
It's almost unbelievable. It reflects what analysts call Russia's meat assaults, a blatant disregard, they say, for their soldiers' lives.
And that 155th Marine Brigade we mentioned, Gudkov's old unit, illustrates the point perfectly. Reportedly suffered awful casualties, been destroyed and reconstituted maybe 8 times. 8 times.
Just chewed up and replaced.
Yeah. It's not just a statistic, it reveals that strategic vulnerability.
Yeah.
Trading lives for tiny gains raises huge questions about the sustainability, the moral cost of Russia's whole approach.
And these human costs obviously tie into the material losses, too.
Absolutely. We talked about the Black Sea Fleet, a third potentially out of action, the Kerch Bridge damage. And then on land, remember Ukraine's incursion into Kursk Oblast back in August 2024.
Right, that was a bold move.
Well, Ukraine claimed they damaged or destroyed over 5,600 pieces of Russian military equipment just during that operation.
Huge numbers.
And that Kursk operation, it wasn't just about destruction. Sources say it had multiple goals. Create leverage for peace talks down the line, disrupt a planned Russian offensive elsewhere, and, crucially, relieve pressure on the Donetsk front.
A multi-pronged strategic objective.
Exactly. Although it's important to note, Russia did launch a counteroffensive there in March 2025, and reportedly that was bolstered by thousands of troops from North Korea, many of whom, tragically, also perished. shows the kind of desperate measures being employed now.
Which brings us right back to manpower, doesn't it? Both sides are facing just immense pressure there.
They really are. It's critical. Ukraine, sources say, is taking more casualties than it's currently recruiting. That leads to this dangerous hollowing out of units, a real problem.
And Russia.
Russia, despite those staggering losses we talked about, seems better able to sustain its effort for now. They use attractive salaries to get contract soldiers, plus regular conscription. But politically, it seems clear they desperately want to avoid another big, unpopular mobilization like the one they had earlier. So huge pressure on both sides to just keep finding people to fight.
So connecting back to Ukraine's strategy, these deep strikes using ATACMS now, what's the ultimate goal in this attritional phase?
Well, the analysis suggests the main purpose right now is essentially to buy time, to alleviate some of that intense pressure on the front lines, give Ukraine breathing room to tackle its manpower issues, to maybe build up stronger defensive lines.
Make the cost higher for Russia to advance.
Precisely. But the sources also stress it can't just be random pot shots. There needs to be a coherent strategy behind target selection. You know, hitting isolated targets is one thing, but hitting a critical threshold, say, taking out 7 out of 10 key ammo dumps in a sector that would have a much bigger systemic impact on the battlefield. It's about creating those systemic effects.
Right, disrupting the whole machine, not just breaking off pieces.
That seems to be the idea, or at least the strategic hope.
This deep dive has really shown how Ukraine's ingenuity, these naval drones hitting way above their weight, the precision strikes, taking out key commanders, it's all fundamentally reshaping the conflict. But we've also starkly seen the unbelievable human and material costs, especially for Russia. Casualties on a scale that's hard to grasp. It really feels like a clash of ingenuity versus brute force, with the toll mounting every single day.
So the big question hanging over all this is, what does it mean for the future of warfare, especially in this era of, asymmetric conflict, advanced tech everywhere? What we've seen is that every strategic gain, every innovation comes with huge challenges, immense costs. And maybe the ultimate leverage in this fight won't just be found on the battlefield itself. Well, perhaps it lies in the really difficult choices being made. How and where do you apply these powerful new tools? And maybe more importantly, how long can everyone involved actually sustain this immense grinding toll? That might be the deciding factor in the end.
A really powerful thought to leave us with as this conflict continues to evolve. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Ukraine's shifting war strategies. We definitely encourage you to keep exploring these crucial and frankly sobering global developments.